Welcome to our builders meetups. And hi guys, I'm Louis from the foundation. And first of all, I would love to welcome everybody to what they call DeFi on summer, but of course this time on Bitcoin and Stacks. So our builders meetup today will feature back-to-back DeFi projects. The first one is Taral, which is bringing DeFi to trade finance. Fun fact, this is the first time that they will unveil their project to the entire Stacks community. And the second is the crowd's favorite, Arkadiko, who just finished their Regtest and currently gearing up for their upcoming mainnet launch this October. And I wouldn't take so much time, and I'm gonna call Vincent to actually give us a brief overview on what Taral is.
Yes, thank you, Louise. Good to present here today. I'm gonna share my screen. Let me know if you can see that. We good?
Yeah, so, we can see it.
Perfect. So what we're building with Taral is effectively we're bringing real world assets to Stacks. And we're doing that by starting with enabling cross-border trade with smart and secure contracting and providing liquidity. So some fun facts. Trade finance is kaput. What does that mean? It means that small ticket international trade involves sending cash into the nether. So for example, if I'm purchasing something from another country, oftentimes I have to just send that cash out and hope that my goods are delivered. Now, if I want to use traditional finance solutions to solve this, they're often expensive, slow, and have a really negative user experience. We're going to deep dive into the process a little bit more in a minute, just so we can really walk through how much of a pain this can be. And additionally, small to medium enterprises are, yeah, the SMEs are quite often declined more than 50% of the time by banks. So not only is it expensive, slow, and has a negative user experience, oftentimes they don't even get access to the financing that they need. And just quickly, I think a lot of people have heard the expression trade finance, probably don't know what it is, too much detail. Like as mentioned, I'm going to break that down a little bit more in a minute. But particularly how big this market is. So if we take a look on the left-hand side, we see that $8 trillion per year is quoted as hope-based trade. This is the example I gave at the beginning, where you have someone order goods, send money out into the ether or the nether, and then the hope that the product arrives, and then the seller obviously hopes that the money arrives once the final goods have been shipped. Particularly if there's a split in the payment terms, so like 20% upfront, 40% later, and then the remaining 40% at the end. So advantages are it's fast to do it this way, but of course it's risky. Now there's another section of the market which is called covered trade, and this is 2.8 trillion a year. So there's obviously a huge gap to be filled here. And just on a really high level, what that involves is applying for insurance and financing beforehand, which is a lengthy process, ordering your goods, sending the money, still hoping for the product and money, though you have the guarantees and security in place. And the positives of this are safer, but tends to be extremely slow and in most cases, pretty expensive. Yeah, so in terms of the current process, I'm not going to go through each of these individual steps, but here's one type of trade finance product, which is called the letter of credit, which is exactly the kind of points that DeFi opportunities can come into, because of the fact that you're completely removing a bank, which is simply confirming the availability of funds, acting as a form of escrow for both importers and exporters. I'll jump over this one actually and then go on to the next one. But this is where it starts to get a bit more interesting. This is what we're looking at in terms of a proposed process. Obviously still very high level here. as we're just starting to get going. There are a lot of details and things that we need to figure out. But essentially, the importer and exporter, if you imagine a platform, a user interface, which is quite clean and easy to use, agree on the purchase terms and shipping on the platform. So how much is the goods worth? When do I want it? How many days are you expecting payment later? Which ports are going to be shipping the goods, et cetera, et cetera. Then once the terms are agreed, the importer actually pays 20% down into the protocol, and then that's locked. Once this has been confirmed, a request for insurance is then passed on to the that says DeFi TTI to trade credit insurance before requesting liquidity from the lending pool. Once this happens, this is paid out to the exporter, and then the importer then repays perhaps 90 to 120 days later. So this allows importers and exporters to access the liquidity that's locked up in DeFi at the moment, accessing liquidity much faster. It's decentralized, as I mentioned. It's cheaper, and the pricing is far more fair and transparent. And then on the flip side, you have for DeFi and protocol participants, it's a DAO. It's going to be an opportunity to lend into real world tangible assets, which is a high quality asset class with historically very low default rates, providing a fixed return for liquidity providers, and the potential for increased upside for protocol token purchasers. So those would be the ones who would be participating in the trade credit insurance protocol. What this looks like in a very quick process. So in the scenario that you have a repaid loan, either stacks, Bitcoin, or some form of stable coin are locked into the lending protocol. In the insurance protocol, the Taral token, which is going to be the token that we're putting forward, is locked into the insurance reserve pool. If no stablecoin has been used, then stablecoins are minted. And here, we'd love to talk to Arcadico about how we can work together on this in future. So conversation with Philip perhaps later. Exactly. So moving on, then a trade finance loan requested denominated in fiat currency is received. The insurance protocol prices the risk of the transaction before issuing and approving the loan from the lending protocol, which is then locked in escrow until the constraints of the trade are completed. So one example would be, for example, that the exporter has proved that they've shipped the goods. Then, of course, the importer repays the loan and interest, which repays to the lending participants, and some of the profits are used to repurchase and burn the Taral tokens. In the eventuality of default, pretty much the same process, of course, except the protocol reserves from the insurance protocol are used to compensate the loss incurred by the lenders. So the goal is to have a fixed rate of return based on particular risk in a individual transaction for the lenders, whereas the insurance protocol participants are going to have a bit more volatility in their returns, and that's going to attract a different type of interested party. I'm going to hand over to Dora now for the roadmap. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm. Yeah, so first of all, before roadmap, one very important part of building this product was the platform that we're building it on. So we chose Stacks. We chose Stacks for a couple of reasons. Well, it's very mature and a very active blockchain platform. As we can see, it's picking up more and more speed at delivering great features. It's performant, since it's built on on Rust. It's one of my favorite languages. It has like an ever-growing ecosystem of tools, tools for interaction with smart contracts, the Clarity CLI, the Clarinet tool, which allows you to test your work. And these things, they make development easy. One of the most important parts of the blockchain platform smart contracts is the language, of course. Clarity is very concise, it's predictable, and I feel it's just focused on transparency and just getting things done. Stacks is of course very big on security, and that's something that interests every DeFi project, especially in the light of recent events. So security is king in this project. Me personally, I love the community and vibe on the GitHub organization. This is especially as a developer, this is maybe one of the best ways to get a feel of the project of a blockchain platform, just by looking at the sheer amount of things being done and the projects being developed and tools around the ecosystem. And yeah, documentation is ever growing and allows us to have like lots of examples and inspiration when building great products. And lastly, it's built on Bitcoin, which allows Taral to access, the liquidity, the power, and the safety of this MVP asset.
Just quickly on that point, actually, to jump in. So a little bit about my background. I've previously been a venture-backed co-founder of an export finance startup in Europe. Also worked in venture capital, and I've been a product manager at a large fintech. And one of the things that I experience when speaking to a lot of these exporters and importers is that they're, let's say, a little bit more traditional, and beyond the tech propositions that we've spoken about already, or Dora has just mentioned, Bitcoin also occupies a lot of mind space. In when people think crypto, the first thing people think of is Bitcoin, and that has a very attractive proposition then for people who are going to be trying something new. In that you can say, we're building on top of Stacks, which is built on top of Bitcoin, which is of course one of the oldest and most secure cryptocurrencies out there. Anyway, sorry, Dora, I didn't want to interrupt you.
And as for the roadmap, of course, our interest is building the MVP, make it testable, secure the funds for lending, then go ahead and test with live customers, and then just assess the technical functionality, create a feedback loop, a continuous feedback loop between the community and the customers to improve our product and to make it together to make it great. And then assess results and continue this feedback loop until we finalize, working production version of it. And yeah, definitely one of the things that we're going to focus on is first and foremost, building it out in the open on GitHub. So we're big fans of open source, and we've noticed that Stacks community is actually also, they're big fans on open source. So talking about the ecosystem and the projects that are being currently developed. So I think this is extremely healthy, and sets us up for a good relationship within the community. Speaking about the community, we also want to build a healthy community around this project. We're definitely gonna issue a token, TAO. We plan to apply for a Stacks Foundation grant once we have everything tied up in terms of planning and costs. And then, of course, one of the most important things, we're always looking for early contributors to the project, open source people that believe in the power of open source, and just building a great product, helping an industry. So yeah, this is I guess This is the beginning of our great journey with Taral, and we're very excited to be here.
First time presenting outwards.
Thank you so much, Vincent and Doru. There's a lot of questions in the chat box. We're going to address it later after the presentation of Arcadico. So I'm going to call Philip to our little stage and present their progress. Arcadico, go for it, Philip. Take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Luis. I think it has not been that long ago since I first presented the project here. I think back in March or so. So only a few short months. Now, having said that, I don't have a specific presentation today for you guys. I just wanted to have a chat with all of you and have this interactive, way of doing this rather than me just blurbing out some stuff the next 15 minutes. Why don't you guys tell me? I'll give you a quick update on what's happening, and then maybe we can jump into the Q&A both with Taral and Arkadiko. But so for those who don't know us, we are stablecoin loans that repay themselves, meaning you have Stacks assets today. You can log those in an Arcadico smart contract, an Arcadico vault, we call that. We stack those Stacks tokens for you. So we're kind of like a pool. We earn yield in Bitcoin on those Stack tokens, and you borrow some stable coins against your own position. And you use those stable coins in whichever way you want. It's the beauty of it is that yield that we generate for you can automatically go towards paying off your loan automatically. On current yields, it's about 3 years that it takes to pay off those loans. Now, we have been developing this for the past 4 to 6 months. As Luis said before, we had a Regtest that we launched in June. We left it open about a month. In fact, it is still open, just not officially supported. And we've had really great results. About 2,600 or 700 vaults were created. We've had a lot of traffic. It's been just really great seeing, the community go to this, which speaks to how people have just been waiting for doing something like this, DeFi on Stacks through Bitcoin, secured through Bitcoin, whatever. So I'm super excited. And to give you some updates, what we have been working on the past 2 months is obviously working on some UX issues, that came up during our tests. There were no real big smart contract issues that came up. We found a few bugs that we fixed. We added a few new features, but nothing major in terms of bugs or things that didn't work. So that was great to see and great to experience. Now, we have incorporated ourselves, so we're definitely going to launch somewhere in October. A lot of the past months was just focused on kind of the boring stuff, between quotes, that I don't want to talk about during a builder meetup, but it's stuff that had to happen. We raised a small round, we incorporated. Now we're going through a security audit, so we have a code freeze in 2 weeks, which means we won't add any extra code, and we wait for that security audit to happen. When the findings get in, I assume we will have to fix a few more bugs, and then we will go live somewhere mid to end of October on mainnet. So that's the current timeline. Now, what we learned in that Regtest was a few things. We learned that people don't really keep their vault very collateralized, and it was really interesting to see because we had this crazy volatility in the Stacks price exactly during our Regtest. So Stacks, I think it went from maybe $1.5 all the way to 55 cents, back to $1.2, which was crazy because all those vaults needed to be liquidated. So now I don't know how accurate those findings were in terms of you're not playing with real money. So we had to liquidate some vaults. But if it were real Stacks tokens, so real money, I hope that people kept a check on their collateralization ratios. Having said that, as a measure, we lowered we lowered the loan to value ratio. So before they were 50%, so you could so for every say $100 in Stacks tokens collateralized, you could borrow $50 against that. We lowered that to launch to 25 because both for us as well as for the community, we think it's important that no vaults or as little as possible gets liquidated, especially in those first few weeks and months. And Stacks is still a relatively small market cap token, so these swings, they can be quite violent. And that's something we learned. People are not the most responsible, even if it's about their money, ironically. So that's something we want to protect the user from. So those self-repaying loans, they keep running. That's one big thing. And another big thing is that people are super excited to hodl our governance token called Deco. And so there will be a few use cases for Deco. One is staking Deco, which in turn you get stake Deco back, so you get rewards if you stake with us. But people always ask me, why should I hold Deco as a governance token? And the reason is pretty simple. If we make money, you make money. There is an indirect revenue share that will flow to all the governance token holders. So that's in short. If you want to learn more about how we exactly do that revenue share, you can read that in our documentation. But the point is, you guys as a community, if you hold our token, you will be compensated, not only through the self-repaying loans, but you will be compensated through a revenue share. That we divide among all holders. So if we're successful as Arcadico, you're going to be successful pro rata to your token share as well. So that's another thing we learned. People are super excited about holding our token. I was really surprised. In fact, listed the token, I think, at 30 cents, and it shot up to like $24 because we also have a trading part in our product, the swap, an automated market maker, where you can trade Stacks USDA, so against our stablecoin, Deco USDA, and Stacks Deco, and everyone was just buying that token. It was pretty crazy to see. I put like 500K, I think, in liquidity, and that was dried up relatively quickly, which means if one side of an AMM dries up, most of it goes to the other. I don't know if you guys are all familiar with those dynamics of an AMM, but that was really cool to see that everyone was excited to hold that Deco. Obviously I am too, else I wouldn't be sitting here. So yeah, those are two big learnings. I don't know, Luis, I can give a demo obviously, but everything is live. So I always say, you try out the product yourself because it's open, it's there, but you tell me.
I mean, we could spare a few minutes. You still have time. Go for it, And I think it's always nice when you guys did it, because usually for us, like a different kind of experience, I go there, I barely understand anything. I was like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? I think it will be it will be nice if somebody could just like walk through, a quick walkthrough, super high level, break it down. I think it'll be really great.
Awesome. Sounds good. Let me check if I can share my screen. Yep. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Cool, awesome. So this is the Arcadico interface. I am logged in here with my own address, and at the top you see your balances. I in fact have 0 Stacks tokens, but I have 1 million in USDA or stablecoin and 1 million Deco. I gave that to myself in the test environment. I'm not that rich in real life, unfortunately, but so that's all test money. I can request, so this is some mocknet action. So I request 5,000 Stacks tokens from my own mocknet, my own blockchain running, and I just refreshed. You don't actually need to do those things, once you're live for real, but this is there. So now I have 5,000 Stacks tokens. In fact, I don't have an Oracle price yet, so I'm going to push the last price of Stacks into my on-chain Oracle. That should have happened. And there you go, 1.11. So now I have stacks, I have Deco, and I have USDA. I see two collateral types, stacks A and stacks B, with a stability fee of 4% and one of 7%. This is the cost of borrowing that you pay for minting your stablecoin against your stacks holding. Why did I say it's a self-repaying loan? Well, because we stack your stacks in proof of transfer, and you don't see the actual APR here, but if you go to stacking.club, probably everyone knows this in the community. You go to current cycle, you see the current 2-week cycle yields you 7%, last cycle was 13%, so it kind of fluctuates. But on average, I always tell people it can be between 7 and 15% approximately. So meaning that your net yield will actually be 7 minus 1%. And why is it 1% and not 4%? Well, that's because of the collateralization ratio. You put in 4 times as many stacks tokens as you borrow, meaning you have a ratio of 4:1, which means the interest that you pay is divided by 4. So if I mint, $100 and I have $400 in stacks tokens in a vault, I pay 4% on that $100, which is actually 1% against the 400. There's some mental math that you have to do, but the net yield is only, subtracted with 1%, or the yield is only 1% less. So I just click new vault, and here I can choose how many stacks tokens I want to put in a vault. I'm just going to choose the maximum. It takes 5,000 minus the amount of stacks that I need to pay my gas fee, so my transaction fee, else I wouldn't be able to create that vault. And against that, I can create 2,200 and a bit USDA. I'll say I want to do 2,000. On the right-hand side, I see my collateralization ratio, which is 277. We always try to incentivize people to stay over 250. So if I do the max here, you see max, it's around 250. Here I see when I get liquidated, this percentage I need to get rid of, but it's 87 cents. So if I say 2,000, it drops to 70 cents. The less you mint against your collateral, the lower your liquidation price will be. Again, I pay 4% on this, but net this would only be 1%. The yield is a lot higher. Again, it takes about 3 years to pay that off. So I do continue. Again, I see everything. I can confirm that, and I click Open Vault. The Stacks web wallet, which is the only wallet that we support today through Arcadico, will pop up, and it tells me I will transfer approximately 5,000 stacks. I can confirm that. I wait a bit, and it's gotten confirmed. So now I have one vault with 2,000 USDA, and my total USDA, remember I told you I already had 1 million, so now I have 1,002,000. Great, now I have those USDA. Now what? I can do all sorts of things with it. Basically, I can, maybe use Taral in the future, or I can go to the swap and I say I want to buy some Deco tokens, and I'll show you that as well. So, sorry, there is no liquidity, so I am going to run a script that adds some liquidity. This one takes a few seconds as well. Basically, what the script does, it runs a transaction adding liquidity to my pool. If I refresh, you'll see it gives me a different message. Say I want to buy 5,000 Deco, for $5,000. Sorry, Deco tokens. That's up approximately 20,000, since the one Deco token is 25 cents. I say, okay, that's great. I swap. Again, the wallet asks me, please confirm this. I'm pretty happy with this. And in fact, the slippage is over tolerance. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't put enough liquidity in it, but it's great because I get this error. I can get rid of the error. Let's try with $50, maybe see what it does then. I confirm that, and that worked. Awesome. On the swap, we don't automatically remove this notification. You can remove it yourself by pressing on the X. But here you see that my USDA balance went down with $50 and I acquired some Deco in return. This was maybe an interesting case where I set 5,000 and where it said, okay, the slippage is too high, which basically means I didn't put enough, liquidity in my script, but I can also configure the slippage tolerance manually. Say I can tolerate 40%, which is like super high. I would never recommend doing this in production, but this is, these are test tokens, and so I could execute this. As I said, you can also buy some stacks tokens or whatever, obviously contingent on there being a liquidity for the pair you're trying to trade against. So this comes, I arrived to the point saying Arcadico wants to be there for you in terms of all your liquidity needs, whether that's just swapping a simple token, improving the capital efficiency of your stacks tokens by minting dollars, our USDA against it, or something else. We want to be there for your liquidity needs. I talked a little bit about staking. You can stake tokens, and this might be, especially for non-power users, this might be pretty new. But you can stake your Deco and you get an APY or return for that. But what are these three other things? By the way, Luis, feel free to interrupt me if I don't have time anymore. I'll finish after.
We can finish with the staking one.
Cool. So these three tokens, they are what we call liquidity pool tokens or LP tokens. And so these are tokens that you get for providing liquidity on our swap. So imagine I provide liquidity on the USDA Deco pair. Then I get ARC-V1 Deco USDA in return, and I can stake that. So not only am I making money on each trade, because a liquidity provider gets 30 basis points of each trade, so 0.3% that is, of each trade, but I can also stake those LP tokens to earn additional Deco governance tokens. So is this compounding way of putting your capital to work? Again, you have single asset Deco staking, and then you have the three Deco pools where we try to incentivize Deco USDA, Stacks USDA, and Stacks Deco. As you see, for us, the most important are these two pools, the last two ones, we give the highest APYs. These APYs are, by the way, not representatives of what's going to happen in mainnet. You will not get 1,400%, but it will be probably triple digit in the beginning, especially as we get launched in those first few weeks. So all in all, we want to be a DeFi platform for your liquidity needs, whether that's swapping, minting, staking, and everything is governed through governance of our platform. So all these parameters, they can be changed. Let's say if you have Deco tokens, you can submit a proposal to change certain parameters. So yeah, in the interest of time, I'm gonna stop here, but just let me know if you want me to demo something else. I'm happy to do that.
No, that's perfectly fine now. And then we can proceed on to the Q&A because there's a lot of questions, and I'm okay. Let's start. Maybe I have a question for both of you, and then we could pick somebody from the audience, right? So my first question is, because native Bitcoin swap is currently out, so what does this mean for Taral or Arcadico? Maybe you guys can answer from like both sides. Maybe you can tell what native swaps first, like native Bitcoin swaps, and then, answer the question.
I think I'll let Friedger answer that since he's here as well, and he created the first one. So he's probably the best.
Here. Friedger, go for it.
Yeah, I think you need to, yeah, well, you can only deal with Bitcoin, wrapped Bitcoins. If you do swapping or these kind of liquidity providers. Yeah, I don't know what else.
Is
I
that
don't
it?
know. Yeah, I don't know what else should I say. So it will be wrapped Bitcoins in whatever sense it's wrapped. Yeah.
Weren't you talking about the catamaran swap, Luis, or
Yeah, I'm
did I?
talking about the catamaran swap. I don't.
So I thought the question. So what it is, or what do you want to?
Yeah, no, because I asked Arcadico, I mean Philip, the question. So the catamaran swap is you. I mean, it's just recently done, right? You guys did it with Kickstarter BTC. I don't know who the guy is, and I was asking Philip, what does it mean for Arcadico or Taral? So maybe you could give an explanation on what catamaran swap is.
Yeah, so I would explain it as a three-leg swap. So you start with putting your stacks or whatever you want to swap into an escrow. Someone else is doing a Bitcoin transaction to a dedicated address. And then you take this Bitcoin transaction on the Stacks chain. It's on the Stacks chain validated. And if it is the one that matches the criteria defined in the first transaction, then the escrow releases the assets.
Yeah, perfect. That's a good one. That's a good right explanation.
And it can be
Yeah.
stacks, it can be an NFT, it can be a fungible token, or you can mint tokens if you do the Bitcoin transaction, whatever. So it's kind of triggering transaction. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So basically, you're using Bitcoin on the native blockchain without it leaving to buy something, let's say, or swap something on Stacks, a token, an NFT, whatever. And so the question from Luis was, what does that mean for Arcadico? And so I'm very excited about Catamaran Swap from a technical point of view. I think the innovation is great. It's amazing because Clarity can read Bitcoin state. You can allow your smart contracts to follow a certain Bitcoin transaction, and that's great. Now the question would be, what is Arcadico going to do with that on the short term? And my answer is, the challenge for me around catamaran swaps, and Friedger, maybe you can elaborate a bit on that, but is that you always need some kind of matchmaking. So you need two sides, a bidder and a taker, let's call them, to come together, which is challenging from the Arcadico point of view to scale. If you compare a catamaran swap to what we have built, an AMM with liquidity pools, you already have both sides. You have Deco tokens and you have USDA, let's say, if you're talking about that pair. And people are happy to put their capital at work because we are able to incentivize them to leave their assets with us through giving them 30 basis points on each trade, through letting them stake those LP tokens. Now, the challenge is, how do we incentivize people maybe to give up their Bitcoin on the native Bitcoin chain and create a pool there? I haven't really figured that out. And so that is my challenge. Technically, how do you scale this? And how do you make sure that this matchmaking service is there? So I haven't really figured that out. And probably we will not launch with anything related to that. But I'd be happy to research it in a further future.
Yeah.
Good stuff, mate. We can always look back, what do you call it, 6 months later about this conversation, and you probably have something with catamaran, just like our first meetup last March. And now I want to call maybe Vincent or Doru, if you guys are familiar with the catamaran, and what's the role that it play for Terrell in the future?
I've just got a couple of very brief thoughts about this, and then perhaps Doru can add a couple as well. So we envision having like a secondary liquidity market on Taral, in that, for example, we're going to NFT the individual trades between an importer and exporter, and that will be the asset that's essentially collateralized against the loan from the liquidity protocol, the lending protocol, and will be underwritten by the insurance protocol. But perhaps you have someone who wants to exit their lending position a little bit earlier. What you can potentially do, and this is something we need to take a look at, is using the catamaran swap to actually allow new lenders to provide liquidity to old lenders and thereby release them from that particular loan. But that's just very like high level thinking about this at the moment. As you mentioned, 6 months down the line, that's probably going to change.
Of course, mate. That's why we have the builders meetup, so we can brainstorm together on how to make your products better. Okay, next one. Dora, do you want to say something after it, or?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I'm usually excited about security, and essentially, and that's more of a general opinion that I've read on the internet and partially mine as well. Wrapped tokens aren't viewed as secure, and because they, most of the time they depend on exchanges. Those exchanges, they have like different security requirements that not everybody is okay with, basically. And in this those security requirements, KYC and things like that, they can restrict some countries, and this is not what blockchain is about. So by this native swap process, I see basically more security and more opportunity for people to do these transactions without requiring exchange.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I would love this.
About the security of catamaran swap, there are some warnings also on the webpage that there's no good support for flash blocks and for big transactions. So using it in some automated way I would say it's not possible in 2.0. So we have to wait for 2.1. And then we can also automate it, and it can scale because the Bitcoin transaction can contain the conditions how you, for example, mint tokens on the stack chain. But so for now, it's just more experimenting.
Thanks for that note, Fraser. And yeah, so we have some questions from Reddit. I think I would love to move forward with those questions first before we do the Q&A for those who put in the chat box. And I want to pull Jasper Bauer, because he has some of the questions from Reddit. Maybe Jasper, you want to ask your questions with Arcadico, the ones that you put on Reddit? Okay, where did it go? Go for it, man. Take it away. We can't hear you if you're speaking, I think. Okay. Oh, he's driving. It's fine. I'll just read it for him because I love the dedication, though. I love the passion and dedication that you're listening to the Builders Meetup while driving. So his question was, he was interested to know what's Arcadico's collateralized basket will look like, how much reliance, if any, will there have peg on USDC, and how much Arcadico plan to combat the pitfalls that DAI is currently dealing with. DAI collateralized basket consisted of 45% USDC. At one point, that might still be high.
Yeah, these are a lot of questions in one, and I could probably talk an hour about it. So I'm gonna try to keep it short. Especially the first question: what does a collateralization look like? Well, today it's only stacks as collateral types, but soon we will have Bitcoin, and I saw some questions about that, which I'm happy to answer after as well. But that point, but we're tapping into that stacks liquidity to start with, and we'll go from there. About the pegs, this is super challenging to keep for a stable coin, especially new ones and early ones, to keep your peg. And yes, you always need something that has a lot of liquidity, a lot of volume, and a stable to peg against. And ideally, that is another stable coin, whether that's a centralized or a decentralized one. Now, the only stable coin in the short term that will be on stacks is USDA and is USDC. So what we will do in the short term is pegging against USDC. How we will do that? Well, that's going to be through arbitrage. So there will be these decentralized groups of traders that see, or that at least say, I believe that one USDA should be worth $1 and that one USDC should be worth $1. And if you assume that those both are true, imagine a USDA is now 97 cents. What does that mean? That gives an opportunity for someone who does arbitrage to buy those cheap USDA and sell them for USDC, and the other way around if the peg breaks upward or downward. Now that's one way of keeping your peg. That helps. And then with the thing about Maker, yes, they are about 40 to 45% still today, if I'm not mistaken, backed by USDC. And I think Maker is probably the best decentralized stablecoin out there. They have done a really great job, but they unfortunately got a little bit screwed due to Black Thursday, which was last year in March of 2020. So the whole markets just collapsed. As a result, a lot of vaults, Maker vaults, had to get liquidated. Now, they had this liquidity shortage. Because what happens when a vault gets liquidated, they had to sell off Ethereum in the open market for DAI. But there was not enough DAI to buy up that liquidated Ethereum. And people, they call them keepers, by the way, in Maker, those decentralized entities, keepers did not want to put up their Ethereum into new vaults because the market was so volatile, because they didn't want to risk their own Ethereum to get liquidated to mint DAI. So that was a problem because the auctions couldn't get executed because no one wanted to buy the collateral, and no one wanted to put up their Ethereum to mint additional DAI to buy up that collateral. So what Maker did was they created a new collateral type called USDC-A, which allowed keepers to put in their USDC into a vault and get DAI out of it. And that's what they did to solve this kind of black swan event. Now, as a result, a ton of USDC went into that collateral type. And so you still, up to today, more than a year later, have all these USDC that kind of, USDC backed DAI, which is unfortunate because you create a centralized systemic risk. And you not only have USDC-A, but also USDC-B. And so these are two collateral types, and I think it's a risk. And in governance on Maker, they have been talking about strategies to reduce that over time, but it's not really that easy. How do you incentivize people to burn their DAI and get that USDC back? It's an open, decentralized, protocol. So it's not that easy to just tell someone now, hey, there's 1 billion in USDC backed DAI. We need to get rid of that. That needs to happen for them over time. And everything resulted from that black swan event. Now they also do this to keep their peg, by the way. They have this thing called PSM, peg stability module, it's called, I think. And they use these USDC backed DAI somehow to make that peg also more stable, because you have way more volume. That's a lot more stable because you have those USDC backing DAI. So that's another thing. Now, the next question is, and I'm going to end there because I don't want to take up all the time, but the next question is, how do we as Arcadico mitigate that? I think two things. We will do the arbitrage, obviously, but also the self-repaying loans, the yield that you get through proof of transfer helps, because every 2 weeks approximately, you get some yield in, which helps keeping your collateralization levels healthy. Every 2 weeks, your collateralization should go up with a few percent. Either if you repay the loan automatically, because then your debt in your vault goes down, or your collateral goes up. So that really helps. Now, will it help in a black swan event where maybe Stacks goes from $5 to $2? Probably not. But we have to look for similar solutions where, and I think I have a solution where we would add, for instance, a USDC collateral type, but with borrowing costs that are so high that people don't want to keep their USDC, USDA backed stable coins, if that makes sense. They would pay an interest so high that they would only do it to buy up liquidated auctions or liquidated vaults, but not keep those stable coins for an indeterminate amount of time because they would pay such high interest. So that's one way to incentivize those decentralized parties, but still, to buy up the auctions, but still not have that centralized risk. I don't know if that makes sense, but hope it does. Happy to follow up, by the way, if you have
No, that's a
questions.
really good explanation, mate. That's very extensive. Okay, I think we have 5 minutes. I want to ask a question for Taral. Yeah, for like trade finance stuff. Because I showed your overview to a friend of mine who actually does importation and exportation. And usually it's hard for trade finance companies, especially SMEs, to take risks. And as far as I can see it, their primary concern will be volatility because these companies sometimes have products that are like very low margin. And with these volatilities, they can't really afford like 10, 20% volatility, Is there like some sort of like risk mechanism that you guys are like in play so this doesn't happen to those SMEs?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really, really good question. What we want to do is essentially ensure that the exporters and importers are completely decoupled from that DeFi risk of 10 to 20% volatility, or perhaps even more in some shock scenarios. The people that are taking the greatest or getting the greatest potential for upside are the insurance protocol participants, as these then have an underwriting risk to those lenders who have a guaranteed set rate of return as well, based on the risk in each individual loan. So the way we're thinking about it is you have a loan which is denominated in fiat. So that's essentially everything that the importer and exporter will experience. For a lot of intents and purposes, actually, they don't even need to know too much about the fact that it's DeFi behind it. Of course, that is going to be our first early adopters, because otherwise they're going to be wondering where the money's coming from. As in, people who know about DeFi will be our early adopters. And then, exactly, just to repeat that again, it's the lenders and the insurance protocol participants who are more likely to be experiencing that 10 to 20% volatility. And the majority of the volatility is going to be captured in the insurance protocol versus the lending protocol, which is going to be a set rate of return covered by the insurance protocol.
Gotcha. Thanks for the explanation. Okay, we have a few more minutes. Maybe somebody in the audience would love to come forward and ask our wonderful speaker some questions for today. Go for it. Anybody?
I think there are a couple of questions in the chat that we
flew past. I think, we should just go on the chat. Wait, I think there's, I want to pick the most interesting one before we okay, what it looks like. Okay, I have a more interesting question. Let's keep those things. Because we always talk about Bitcoin as a collateral, right? This is also for Arcadico and Taral, but if from an outside perspective, they always want Bitcoin as a collateral, and both projects are probably backed by STX in the beginning. Can you explain, Philip from Arcadico, or like Doru and Vincent from Taral, how will you leverage Bitcoin as a collateral in the future? Because we always preach in the community, oh, Bitcoin is the best collateral types as in the world, liquidity and all these kind of trades, but by the end of the day, we start with stacks. Can you break it down,
Happy to let Doro or Vincent go first if they want.
Doro, would you like to take this, or I've spoken quite a bit? It's up to you.
No, I'm actually kind of started thinking about this, so probably gonna have an answer at a later date.
I can comment a bit on it. So real quick, there's a few ways to get Bitcoin onto stacks. There's a wrapped form where you pretty much give up custody of your own Bitcoin. And so, for instance, TokenSoft is doing that today. We will have wrapped Bitcoin really soon, I think within the next quarter or so. Not sure but I've seen a lot of things moving there. So very confident that that will happen. I heard through the grapevine the other day that something might or might not be working on a federated version of Bitcoin as well, which is really a lot more exciting because then you spread your risk among a few entities rather than just one, which is now Anchorage, which is this institutional custodian that TokenSoft will be working with. So these are two ways of getting your Bitcoin collateral onto stacks. And we will, from Arcadico, be leveraging both of them. So super excited about that. Because, and I'm going to really quickly talk about one use case, if I'm still allowed, Luis, because I know it's 8 and people want to go home or have dinner or whatever.
Go,
but
knowledge is drug, we can take it.
Awesome. So imagine we add Bitcoin as a collateral type. You can give your Bitcoin and lend, or sorry, borrow some USDA against that, right? It's the same as you put stacks and you borrow USDA against it, but now with Bitcoin. Now imagine you use those USDA to buy additional stacks, and you stack those stacks tokens in proof of transfer. What that you just do in that process is you are earning a yield on your Bitcoin. And so for the end user, this is quite complicated still today, but we will be working with wallets that support both Bitcoin and stacks. And next to your Bitcoin position, you will have a button, earn, I'm just gonna say a number, earn 5% of my Bitcoin. What happens in the background is we take your Bitcoin, we collateralize it, we mint USDA against it, we use that USDA to buy those stacks tokens, we stack those stacks in proof of transfer, and boom, you have your Bitcoin yield from your Bitcoin position, which is pretty fucking awesome. And it all happens through Arcadico. And so I'm super excited about that use case. But that indeed requires a wrapped Bitcoin on the stacks chain. Now, will it ever be possible through a native Bitcoin? I'm not sure, because for the Arcadico use case, we need very granular control of your Bitcoin. We need to be able to write and sign transactions. And so today that is not possible through Clarity. But I believe the earlier use case that I just described is pretty exciting already, because we're just gonna kill BlockFi and all those stupid centralized services, and we will give you a better yield, decentralized, trustless, and you trust us. Well, you don't, because you trust the code. So that's something I'm really excited about to launch.
Man, you're sending it, right? Sending Arcadico. I don't know where, but you're sending it from this pitch. We need that infographics for all these swaps that you talk about, because it was hard for me to get up. Is there anything you would like to say, Vincent Andoro, before we end our session for tonight?
Yeah, perhaps 2 final words. Thanks everybody for listening. We're just getting started. We don't have a committed time roadmap in front of us at the moment, but that's going to come and be formed as part of our grants application over the next few weeks. Plug the socials, please come and join our Discord community. We'd love to see you there and hear more about your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll plug you guys in, definitely. Doro?
Well, guys, I'm super excited to have been part of this meeting, this builders meeting. A lot of great things discussed here. So thanks a lot.
Okay, Philip, your last plug in. Go for it.
We're going live soon, so come join us on Discord, Twitter, wherever. Super excited to have you all, and looking forward to get those stable coins rolling and get those self-repaying loans going. See you soon.
Soon. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. And DeFi on Bitcoin is here. And well, have a nice day, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Ciao.
Bye.